Live, ladies and
Awesome.
gentlemen, we are live. Welcome
Cute
everybody to another fine Saturday night with myself and those two knuckleheads down below. That's of course Jess and my good friend Brian. Jess, the daughter I
Hello,
never
hello.
had but always wanted. And as you can see to the, yeah, that side of me, you can see all of our social media. So if you are new here, welcome to the channel. Welcome to your first live stream with us. And go and check out some of our social media links. We post there quite often, especially on Facebook. You know, we just have fun. So tonight, what are we doing? It is... Okay, the cue didn't work.
It's what?
Ask for
Okay,
help.
okay. It is ask for help because I can't call
Okay.
it that copyrighted name.
The first
No,
letter
no, we can't call it that copyrighted
No.
name. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to run the intro. Hey, look at that. We're back. I'm Richard. That's Brian. No, that's Brian. And
There you
that's
go. There you
Jess. And I got to figure out which way my fingers are going tonight. We've got some people that we're going to say hello to in the chat. We've got Trevor Rickard, who was the early bird tonight, along with Pierre's Robotic. I know I butchered that, didn't I? Ben Brady, One Raz, HVAC A to Z, Snapshot FPV, Corey Mack, 3D Printing and Painting, our good friend Jerry Knapp. We hope that Jerry Knapp is doing well. I believe he just recently got out of the hospital. Mark Baker,
Welcome home, Jerry.
Rex Waldy, Robert Marvin, David Sell, and I got everybody. Excellent.
Hurrah!
So, what is Ask for Help? Well, Ask for Help is our Saturday night live streams now. We are using those to help you guys with your 3D printing problems. Now, you can obviously go ahead and send us your questions. I'm just going to cut to that right now. So, here's how we want you to do it. If you've got questions for our live streams, we want you to submit them to questions@thefirstlayer.com. And of course, they will go into our email. We'll see them. If we don't have an answer for them when they come in, then we have some time to research them, because we usually close off questions on Friday night so that we have a little bit of time to research any last minute ones, so that you guys get a chance to see what we're doing. And you guys get your questions answered live by the fun people here at, you know, the First Layer. And there we all are again.
Ones that weren't on camera.
There you go. That's right. I have to cut to that because I can't do us all at the same time. Well, that just came out wrong, didn't it?
No, it's a little cozy. This is our first run of these new.
This is our first run of this. So we've got Brian, Jess, and myself. Hey, there's Joseph Jolly. Hello. Good evening from Orlando, Florida, he says. Well, it's not horribly cold here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So I'm pretty happy about that. It will be. Well, no, I don't think. I think we're pretty much over the big cold snaps.
No. It's a high of -10 on Monday, so.
Okay, so let's jump into some of these questions real quick. We're going to answer some questions from Brian's video that was put out on Wednesday. We've got one question that came in this week through email, which is actually a 3-part question. But first, I want to answer this question from Pierre's Robotics or Robotic. What software to use, Visual Studio Code or Arduino? You can take this one, Brian.
Visual Studio Code. Don't listen to Richard. Ignore last video. Visual Studio Code is the way to go from now on. They've ironed out most of the bugs, but quite frankly, it's much more universal for all the different platforms, whereas Arduino is limited to 8-bit. And as everyone's going 32-bit board now, you may as well learn it while you can. So we've kind of touched on it briefly. I briefly jumped through the install steps in the last video as a part of Scott Lattine's new auto-build Marlin script for Visual Studio Code. However, there is a little bit more to it if you don't want to use that plugin. But I'm giving that plugin a thumbs up right now, especially if you're running Marlin 2.0.2 and forward, and they just dropped 2.0.3 the other night. Thumbs up. It works great.
So there you go.
There's
One
my
other,
ramble.
yeah. Robert Marvin has a question. He says, anyone tell me how to get instructions on connecting my PC to my CR10 via the USB interface, not for printing, but to control the bed, etc. We'll always use microchip to print, at least for now. So I imagine what he's talking about there is how do you connect the two? Well, the best way to do it, I would say, is take a USB cable, plug it into your computer, plug it into the printer, find out what port that it's communicating on, whether that be COM port 1, 2, 3, 4, or whichever COM port's available for it. Make sure that you load up one of your slicers. Cura, in this instance, will allow you to monitor and move your head around by just clicking on the monitor, and we're going to cover that more in an upcoming video on Cura. So that's the way that I would do it. And there's a couple other ones out there. You can do it through Pronterface. You can do it through
Yes.
Repetier Host. You can do it through Prusa, I believe, the Prusa slicer. So there's a myriad of ways to do it, but the easiest way I've found is just by making sure that you've got a USB connection, find out what port it is, and make sure that you can communicate from Cura right into your CR10 and you can move things around.
Yeah, you pretty much got it. For communication and doing your basic print control, I 100% recommend Pronterface. Now, bear in mind, if you do have an 8-bit board and you are printing with the Arduino bootloader, the moment you connect and open up a new serial session, it does reboot the board. It's how you flash firmware. So my advice is don't have anything hooked up via USB or intend to plug it in or out if it is an 8-bit board, unless you are doing a run such as, what's it called there? The Octoprint. If you're
Octoprint,
running
yeah.
Octoprint and it's connected all the time, then you'll be fine. But I know lots of people who connect and disconnect, and you lose your print job. If you're on 32-bit boards, you're good.
So we've got a question that came in off of email this week, and it's a three-parter, so this might take a little bit, so bear with us in the comments. This is from Battleware at hotmail.com. He says, okay, so I hate to go back to this, but I am at a point that I am stuck and I've been there for more than 2 weeks. He says, in your video, how to install the SKR3 dip, at 2104. So this is somebody who's actually taking notes. You start to say in your video how to something about the Trinamic drivers, and then we are going to find the line, and then you just move on to something else. The line that we're talking about, he wants to know what the line was. The line that we're talking about, it's a group of lines actually. And they are going to actually tell you what type of Trinamic driver to put in there, depending on what driver you're using. So if you're using Trinamics like the 2208s, the 2209s, what are the other ones, Brian? Help me out here.
Let's see, 2100, 2130, 2208, 2209, 2200, 5160, 5161s. We don't talk about those yet. Yeah, Trinamics, smart ones.
Yeah, there's a ton of drivers out there. All you have to do is change those 3 lines for the X, Y, and Z and the E to whatever driver, Trinamic drivers that you're using, if you're using Trinamic drivers. So make sure that you have Trinamic drivers on your board, on the SKR dip, and on, well, we know on the Mini that they're all 2209, so that's a pretty easy one. We'll come back to question 2 in just a little bit. He also wants to know about BL Touch. He wants a little bit more information on installing a BL Touch. We have an episode about that coming up very, very soon. So let's go and have a look over what do we got going on in our chat tonight, guys.
That's a very good question. Lots of hellos. What we got here? Saying hello, scream, wave your hands for help. Any tips for thin wall printing?
Any tips for thin wall printing? Depending on what you're doing, if it's lithophanes, I really don't do thin wall printing. I typically do 3 walls or 3 shells, depending on what slicer you're using. Will depend on the language that it's going to use. So I usually use 3. So I really don't have many tips for thin wall printing. I would say to slow it down. What about you, Brian?
Yeah, slow it down, work on your retractions. If you do use linear advance, take advantage of it because I guess the question is when you're talking about thin walls, are you talking about single extrusion walls or are you talking about thin structures? Because they both have very different responses. So if you're doing a lot of thin walls and you're doing lots of short layers, you're going to want to increase your cooling, drop down your temperature, and use the minimum time feature in Cura. But for thin walls, you really got to get your printer dialed in because when you have 3 exterior walls or more, usually any of the deficiencies of flow are kind of resolved on the inner walls before you see it on the outside. And Cura does have an exterior wall setting for your speed. So if time's not of the issue, I would say go ahead and rip your insides and make it go quick. But on the outside, slow it down to 20 to 40 millimeters per second. And I think you'll notice great results without losing much print time.
That's actually a really good tip. We've got another one here. It says, I'm concerned about my first layers. This is coming from J. Lewis 8521. My first time using the build surface on the Ender 3 Pro, when leveling, I worry that just because it sticks well, that it still may be too far. So I'm assuming based on that, that you're figuring that your head is too far down onto your bed. If you're getting indentations, now here's the thing about those Ender 3 Pro boards or Pro beds is that they're made to be replaceable. So they are consumable. You're gonna wreck that bed over time. My recommendation for that is once you've wrecked that bed or even before you wreck it, go ahead and just pull it off and replace it with a piece of glass. Use some glue stick to hold down your print. Re-level your bed, of course. Make sure that you're using that piece of paper. I wish I had one here on my bench, but I don't. Make sure that you're using that piece of paper so that you get that proper drag. Now, a lot of people don't understand what proper drag is. So if when you come into Spool 3D, which we're going to give them a big thumbs up and a fist bump tonight, I always try and teach people this is the right amount of drag that you need on your paper, and usually you will get very successful prints by just kind of following that rule. You don't want too much drag. You just want to be able to feel that nozzle dragging on the paper. You don't want it to crush the paper. If you're crushing the paper and it's really tough to pull out or the paper's bunching up as you push it back under, then you're obviously too close. Yes, no, maybe so?
Yep. Yeah, you're covered there.
I agree with that.
I just use a BL Touch. I just don't.
Well,
I don't worry about it anymore. I'm sorry.
I
know we talk about,
still
like-
use BL Touch, but when I'm leveling a bed for the first time, before I even do my G29, which is your auto bed leveling, I will always go through my bed and try and make sure that it is as level as possible to the tool head, not to the surface of the surface that your printer is sitting on. So here's a problem here's a problem that a lot of people do, especially beginners, is when they think of leveling, they think of an actual level. So they're putting a level on their print bed and they're trying to level the print bed to that. That's not the right way to level a bed. Leveling the bed is really not the proper term. Tramming the bed to the tool head is the proper term. So when you're adjusting those knobs on the bottom, what you're essentially doing is you're making sure that that head is the same in 4 corners of that bed. Whether your table seems level or not, you're always going to throw it out if you use a level on it. Don't do that. Please don't do that.
And just fun fact is by default, your bed leveling schema, if you're out by more than 2 millimeters between points, it will fail.
Yes.
You can do what I did, and you can set it higher, and it will try its best to compensate. But yeah, nothing beats getting it leveled properly, and then you end up with nice big cubes like this guy here, which I just pulled off my machine today.
Nice. Let's see the
Yeah, not
top.
bad for a. Well, the top's still got a little bit to work on there. This is a point. This is a 0.8 millimeter nozzle. Okay,
Okay.
so you
Oh,
gotta. Yeah, so you got to give me a break on that. But yeah, that's all a result of tuning in the leveling, and even the ghosting has been quite minimal. So that's kind of nice.
I'm just kind of looking through some of the questions here. Hobby Howie FPV says copy and paste G code from Cura and install in Prusa did not work.
Oh, okay,
There's
okay.
probably a good reason for that. The way that these different machines work, yes, they all work on G code. Yes, they all work on M codes as well. However, when you transfer, and I've done this from Simplify 3D over to Cura, or actually the reverse, Cura over to Simplify 3D, and something gets lost in the translation. So when it's in Cura, it will purge up the one side of the bed before it
Mhm.
starts its print, as most people know. You try and do that in, take that code and put it into Simplify 3D, and what will happen is it will go to the center of the bed, then it will start to purge out a line on a diagonal, then it will purge down. So something gets lost in the translation between different programs. So it's not always wise to pick the G code up from one slicer and try and throw it into another. 9 times out of 10, it
Yes,
doesn't work.
and the part of the reason is Cura makes some assumptions on how to heat up the system. For instance, if you don't have any heating parameters in your start G code, it will automatically do it prior to issuing any G code commands. And I can't say if any other slicers do that by default. However,
Mhm.
if you go and add your own heating parameters further down in the G code, then Cura neglects that and
Right.
just goes and issues your G code. So there are some fun ways to play around with Cura, including variables that other slices don't do. And I'm sorry, I'm probably not going to move away from Cura over to Prusa or any of those ones because I'm getting Cura pretty dialed in at this point, and it really is an opinionated matter.
That's very true. Everybody has their favorite slicer, and I'm finding this out. And I constantly get comments and emails and PMs on Facebook that why aren't you covering Prusa Slicer? Why aren't you covering Repetier? Why aren't you covering some of the other ones that are out there? And the reason is, for the most part, is that our audience, for those people that watch this show, are mainly Cura users, and most 3D printers today, especially if you're buying a new one for the first time, you are going to get a version of Cura with it because it is an open source program and it's got a big community behind it, always trying to improve it. So to me,
Absolutely.
it's I like Simplify 3D, but over the last few months, actually since about October of last year, I haven't used it except for maybe once or twice. I've been using
Mhm.
Cura more often than not.
I'm in the same boat. My S3D has remained idle, and a couple times when I thought I was having printing issues from Cura, I was tempted to try it out, but I realize how many features it's lacking at this point. I'm sorry, you know. First, you go and threaten to raise a major version and charge everybody, and then you go radio silent and don't do squat.
Yeah,
It's I'm probably 3 months away from calling it obsolete or dead at this point. I'm sorry, but it
I'm
feels
kind of in
abandoned.
that same boat. I'm in that same boat. I don't think that they're going to be able to sustain what they've got right now unless they come out with some updates real soon because they haven't come out with an update since the beginning of last year, if I remember right.
Yeah. That's
So,
correct, and I believe that update only contained a support for 8 nozzles or something ridiculous
yeah,
that no consumer uses.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't set a great send a great message to your consumer base. Sure, as an industrialist, that's great, but
Yeah,
I feel a bit abandoned by them, and yeah, it sounds harsh, but that's
I'm
the
kind of
truth.
feeling the same way. You know, when you pay $200 Canadian for that software, which is 150 US, It really kind of hurts when you're finding
Now, I
that.
mean,
Go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say, it's because when we bought it, we needed it.
Right.
Cura was
Oh, you guys just went dead. We lost you guys. I don't know how we lost you guys. Can you guys still hear me? We'll just have a look. Yeah, Brian, you are going to have to, yeah, you're going to have to relog on. So I guess I'll move to me for the time being. There we go. All right. Yeah, Brian went dead. I don't know why, but we are still transmitting. Okay. Richard is an S3D elitist. Ben is saying, no, I'm actually not. So if somebody can message Brian in the chat, just let him know that his feed to me went dead. That would be appreciated. So let's take a look here. I'm going to answer this question again from Battleware as part 2. He says, so here's my second question, kind of related to the first. So I would assume that the Marlin we are setting up is basically everything I need to set up and make the machine run. I ask because it seems like trying to set up Marlin 2.0 for my regular board needs a lot more programming, or is there a lot more programming that needs to be done that isn't covered in my video? There isn't a lot that needs to be done. If you're setting it up for a specific printer, go into and look at the, oh, Brian, looks like Brian's back now. Okay. I'm going to just get him back up here on the screen. I don't know what happened to them. They froze. But I think I can hear them. Can I hear them? I can't hear them. Nope, I can't. They've got no audio. They have no audio. So, okay. Let's get back to this. Their internet died. Yep, coming back. We'll see if they get audio. They might have to come back in. So basically, 2.0 can be compiled in Marlin. However, Marlin 2.0 can be compiled in the Arduino IDE, but they are moving more and more over to Visual Studio Code. So we're going to do a lot more coverage on Visual Studio Code and how to manipulate things for given printers. Now, it shouldn't be that hard. If you follow the examples, you grab the example code that is in the examples file, you should be fine. I think I'm hearing something now.
Yes, you are. It is us. We are back.
They're back.
we
There
had a
they
little
are.
moment with the internet.
TELUS
Oh.
has been having issues all day.
Yeah, it's been an issue across the board, not just and TELUS, Rogers, every carrier out here has had some problems. So hopefully that's a little better now.
Hopefully the quality comes back.
Yeah, we're looking a little low grade there, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it is what it
works.
It works. All right, so let's get continuing. We're almost at the halfway point here.
I heard you were just talking about Marlin configurations. I just learned something very interesting last night.
Okay.
And that is that the Marlin configurations is no longer included with the default Marlin download.
Oh yeah,
So,
your
yeah.
video is bad.
Yeah, I'll refresh this in a minute. Oh wait, come on.
Wait, you're coming
Come
back
on.
now.
Magic internet! Ha! So yeah, that's a thing. Here, look at this. I'll even give us titles. Huzzah!
That's why they froze.
Yeah, that's exactly why we froze. Yes, so Marlin 2.0, when you go into the default configurations folder, and I hear you spray painting or doing something fun there.
I'm
Into
drinking.
that folder now.
Ooh, what
Yeah.
you drinking?
When he's not allowed to say, we're not allowed to say, any of our copyright.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
it's a family show, but it's not targeted
yes.
to kids.
Yes. I gotta love it. Eh?
That's why the dog came in for a visit.
Yes. So we Marlin 2.0, when you go into configuration, the configuration folders in the new release, it actually gives you a README file, and there's a new GitHub to download all the templates. I kind of don't understand why they went that route. I'm guessing it probably is just to separate it so that OEMs can submit changes without screwing up the whole trunk. But for the time being, you're probably going to want to go to their website and follow the guides to get the new examples, which is unfortunate. They changed that with almost no announcement between when we shot our last video and this one.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right, there we go.
I saw
Now we're all back.
There we go.
questions in the chat.
Sorry?
I saw a couple more questions up there in the chat.
Yeah, we're gonna bounce right back up because we had our disconnect here, and
Yeah, okay.
Robert
where
Marvin
were we?
asking, could you please list the email for questions again?
I certainly can. Let me go pull that one up. There we go. All right, so there is the questions at thefirstlayer.com. If you want your questions answered, drop us an email, just like it says there, right beside me, right there. And you can go ahead, and that goes a long way to helping us fill content for Saturday nights to help you guys out.
All right, just found a comment back here. Sorry, we had a couple comments buried, and that was, thanks to me. I'm going to start off with a question from BooBoo759 saying, using Cura 3.6 with a Cr-10S Pro, how do you put a command to stop for a filament color change? I believe that the 10S Pro has a filament runout sensor, correct, Richard?
Yes, it does.
Okay, if it does, what you want to do is you want to add the code M600. M600 is a code for a filament change, and you can use it as a pause feature to try and back it out and swap your colors out. Now, you'll need to know your layer height change on that, and I'm going to boot up Cura, the new version. Unfortunately, I think 3.6 is too antiquated at this point to add a custom filament change at height. But I'm just going to check. I'm pretty sure it's in 4.4.1. So I will look into that. Meanwhile, Robert Avery has asked, what is the best 32-bit board right now to use on a new 3D printer build? Richard, I'll let you take this one.
I think I can. Let me just go to my camera. There we go. There we are. Okay. So what's the best board to use for 32-bit? Well, you've got a number of different boards to choose from, depending on what your budget is. I will say this about Big Tree. They're a great board. They're at a great price. However, Big Tree has used us as the guinea pigs for their boards to tell them what's wrong with it. Now, with that said, do I like the Big Tree boards? Absolutely. I think they're a great little board at a great little price. Now, MKS has a board, an S-Gen board that is a 32-bit board as well. You can also go and get some of the more higher priced boards. What is the name of that one that I'm thinking of? Brian, help me out.
The MKS S-Base?
No, not that one. The other really expensive 32-bit board.
Oh, you mean the Duets?
That's it, the Duets. The Duets are $250 or $180, somewhere in there.
They're over 200 Canadian.
Yeah, they're over
not
200
including the
Canadian.
Wi-Fi module, if I recall.
That's right. So if you are looking at getting a 32-bit board, I would start with the SKR boards from Big Tree. There's many to choose from. If you're in the Creality space, the E3 dip and the E3
Mini 1.2.
Yeah, both are direct drop-in replacements for just about all Creality printers across the board. They'll fit the bolt patterns very easily, and the ports all line up. So it doesn't matter if you're on a Cr-10 or you're on an Ender 3 or an Ender 5, all those ports line up. Now, getting the programming for them, that's a whole nother issue. You are going to have to download the board specs for that. So I would go to SKR's GitHub and then go ahead and download the one for the board that you have and make the changes that you need for whatever machine you're putting it into. So if you're putting it into an Ender 3, that one's pretty much done. If you're putting it into an Ender 5 or an Ender 5 Plus, as Brian and I both found out, there's a lot of massaging you have to do in terms of the code to make sure that it sees the bed properly and it's not going off and trying to do a homing in a spot that it's not able to home.
Now, I will modified, but with the exception of my Cr-10 S behind me that runs an SKR 1.3, every single one of my machines now runs an E3 dip. Now, that being said, I do have a lot of customizations. However, I can tell you this: if you guys, let us know in the chat below if you want, and we'll upload to the Facebook group a default configuration example for an Ender 3 with the base features and what fits on that chip, and that should work direct on your machine. Now, this has been changing quite a bit, because if you asked me 2 weeks ago if I'd recommend the E3 boards, I'd say not yet. However, all of the bugs with the Trinamic steppers have been resolved in vanilla Marlin. So you can now run vanilla Marlin 2.0.3 as of this recording today on your E3 dip or Mini 1.2 without having to use the custom third-party TMC stepper directories or anything. So that was a huge leap forward in compatibility in my books. As I said, I have all my machines running some variation of Big Tree Tech boards right now. The only major bug I have not been able to resolve yet, and I'm sure you've seen it on GitHub, is there are issues with the higher powered and very expensive TMC 5160 and 5161s on these boards. I don't think it's Big Tree Tech's fault. I think it's an issue with the STM32. But for the time being, stick with 2208s. And if possible, stick with Big Tree Tech's 2208s, because they're all color coded. You can't insert them wrongly, and they just work if you set your jumpers correct.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now let's get back to the last question. Before we do that, again, here you can see over on that side, I've put up the email so that you guys can find us online for, we are opening it up now from the time that this show ends tonight right through till Friday of next week. And then by Friday, we won't take any questions after a certain period of time. So this is the best way to get your questions answered, is by sending them to us at questions@thefirstlayer.com. Just before we move on to that, I do want to let you guys know, because we are at the halfway point tonight, that you can get our merch, and that's a way to support the show. Now, there's many ways to support our show. One is just by viewing, liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing with people that you know might be interested in the information that we have to offer. Other than that, you can get yourself a t-shirt and show your First Layer pride. You can also get hoodies. T-shirts are available in both gray, black, and purple. Hoodies are also available in gray, black, and purple. We also have a coffee mug that is only available in gray and purple. And you can go and check that out. I have to do because this show is sponsored by us tonight, because the live streams are done from my home and from Brian's home. So now we're going to go back
to for ourselves.
What's that?
It's sponsored so much by us that we didn't even afford enough money to buy us shirts.
There you go. I have 2 of them, but we'll arrange.
Okay, we need to know who's the sneaky one of you that sent Richard YouTube t-shirts. We got to know this. We still have not figured this out. One day
I
this
still
shirt
haven't
just
figured
showed
it out.
up.
There's a shirt, a mug, and a hat all showed up one day.
So thank you to the kind
Yes.
fan. We appreciate it.
Whoever sent it, thank you again. It was great. I really enjoyed it. Jess, Paul Cumbers saying hello to you.
Hello.
There's no lasers tonight. There's no sunglasses.
Yeah, I have eyeballs.
Ben's making a
Joseph,
comment here. I want to address this real quick. Sorry to
Sure.
cut you guys off, but Ben's making a comment here. He says, best drop-in board is Easy Board for the from TH3D Studios. Ben, I'm going to disagree with you on that. And I'm sure Brian's going to disagree with you on that as well. There are boards, yes, they've done a great job of their firmware. They've done a great job of their board, but I don't think it is the best or the easiest even.
I guess what it comes down to is, what's the best bang for your buck now.
Yeah, exactly.
For Tim's hardware, it's made in the USA, it's available in the USA, and you can get it rather quick. However, I'm going to be honest, I can get all of the big tree tech stuff faster here in Canada than I can the US stuff. And if the premium is worth it for our American audience, then I say go for it.
Yeah, me
I can
too.
tell you right now, if the big tree tech boards gave me issues with operation, then I would say it's worth it. However, I've got a big tree tech E3 running my Cr-10S5 downstairs, which has a build volume over 800 millimeters tall now, and I've had it running for 8-9 days straight, and I have not had a single hardware failure. In fact, if anything, it was software that I was messing around with, and I'm playing with all the beta features of Marlin. So, on we did not have the opportunity to review the Easy board, and at the price of, I think it's about $90 Canadian, it's not worth our while to import into Canada for that review, because right now we don't have any needs that it would resolve that we haven't already resolved with other products. And that's all it is. It has nothing to do with branding. It's the same thing with the Duets, right?
Right.
Is a Duet is an excellent board. I've heard nothing but great things about it. But I'm not going to drop $200 just to see if it does a little bit better than my current boards, because there's no problem I need to solve. And that's the message you guys have been seeing me say lately is, if you have a problem, fix it. If you don't have a problem, don't go looking for one.
That I agree with 100%. And too many people go looking for one. And this boils down to a lot of things that I say when people buy brand new printers, especially when they're new to the hobby, is don't listen to the internet about do this, do that, do this, do that, and you'll have an amazing printer. Get to know the printer first. I'm not saying, wine and dine and take it on a date, but get to know what the printer is capable of, how it works for you. Half of the battle is understanding the slicing software and how to slice models properly. And again, we're covering all that in upcoming episodes. We've got a huge list that we've made of episodes for this year, and they're all geared towards helping you get better prints and helping you to update your printer if need be.
All right, I'm just going to catch up a bit. Sorry, I was a little bit behind on the questions here tonight, but Joseph Lorenzen says, howdy from West Texas. PLA is sticking so hard, the projects are damaged when attempting to move.
Nozzle is too close.
Yeah, the nozzle's too close. And
Now,
I don't think you probably...
right now. Sorry,
go ahead. I was going to say, he probably doesn't have Z-Hop. Let's stop stepping on each other.
Z-Hop can actually introduce a lot of issues. What you want to look at is there's a pretty hefty zone with PLA about the proper layer height there, right? So if you're squishing it really hard against the build plate, it will still print fine. However, depending on your surface of what's underneath it, you can get too much adhesion. There actually is a gray zone for too little and too much. There's no magic, plus or minus 0.001 that's going to work for your bed. And you're even going to have fluctuations with your bed leveling. So this cube here that I printed, I'll see if it shows up shiny there, but let's see.
Yeah.
There we go. So you can see, I actually was a little too high on this one. So as a result, there actually is gapping on that first layer. That doesn't mean it didn't adhere to the bed. And what you'll see is a difference in sheen based off the glue stick variance in the height there, because I haven't actually rinsed this off yet. So at the end of the day, obviously, if you're hearing extruder clicking, you're too close. If it seems to be lifting or you're having gapping between your walls while printing that first layer, it's too far. And it gets harder as your layer height is smaller. So usually, even if I'm printing at, in this case, this cube was 0.16 millimeter layer height, I still have my initial layer at 0.2 because that's where it gets me the most consistent bed adhesion.
There you go. There's a funny one here from Alex Garcia. Is this live right now? Right now? Yes.
It was
Alex,
live 30 seconds ago.
It's all a dream. It's all a dream. We're not really here. No, we are here tonight, and I want to thank some of the people for the great comments that they're giving us. Here is one from Joseph Jolly. You guys have an awesome show. Thanks for all. I have learned a lot. Ken Jansen says he agrees with Joseph Jolly. Great show. Thank you very much, you guys. We do really appreciate that. We also have Super Chat turned on. I know I'm the guy who's shilling everything tonight, but we have Super Chat turned on. It really goes a long way to helping us out with our studio stuff and trying to get us to China this year. Brian and I are really wanting to go to China this year.
That keeps changing week by week, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. If the what do you call it there?
The health crisis
virus,
is sorted
yeah.
out.
If it's sorted out by the time we're ready to go, then we'll go. If not, if it's still a lingering issue, we will take whatever money that we have put together, and for our, from YouTube and from the sale of our shirts and things like that, and we will put it into better equipment for you guys, so you guys can have a much better look at the show, and we can update things a little bit for you. Alex Garcia says, Alex Garcia says, don't go to China.
I was thinking the same thing.
I'm hoping they do sort out the hell. I mean,
I am too.
For a lot of us, I've been really bad. I like to order a lot of stuff on AliExpress, and all my shipments are held up. And I completely understand it. You need to take care of the situation at hand. So
this is like a giant sheet of foam. I haven't opened it yet because it's from China.
Find out where we live.
Yeah, don't show your address on screen.
Sorry. Yeah.
But yeah, we've had some odd stuff come in and out. Actually, my Big Tree Tech board is held up in customs right now, and I'm still trying to sort that.
I just don't want to open it because it's gonna spore all the infection everywhere.
So I'm gonna catch up on previous items here. Ben was saying that Cura 3.6 did support filament change at height, and I believe it does. I haven't played with that version in so long. However, in Cura 4.4.1, it is under the post-processing modified G-code section.
Yes.
With a pause at height for various different printers. I don't know why they all have their own G-code variants. However, there are options in there to pause at the height. I honestly haven't tried that specific implementation, as I do a lot of my G-code modification myself. That being said, it is in there. So, play around with it. Let me know what you think. 380 Printing and Painting, our good friend Jerry says, I bought a Big Tree Tech 1.3 for my Hypercube 445, but I haven't installed it yet. Got some free 22/8 from Arion to put in for X and Y. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised at how quiet they are.
Yes, you will. Ben is saying you're going to buy the Big Tree boards over and over. They're just not designed well. I don't know if I agree with that statement. I haven't bought them over and over again, and I've put them in a few of my machines, and they seem to be working just fine.
The only place I could see it being a failure is if the MOSFET is undersized, because I do use external MOSFET controllers for my big printers. However, I haven't smoked mine yet. Snapshot FPV is asking, has anyone had issues with the start G-code in Cura 4.4.2? Now, are you using the beta there? Because as far as
that
I know,
must be the beta.
4.1 is the latest version out, I have not had any start G-code issues. All I've actually had was issues with a bad SD card. And so if you have a Windows computer, I would advise every time you plug in your SD card and it prompts you, do a scan and just make sure your SD card integrity is good. And buy good quality, well-branded SD cards. Don't continue to use the garbage ones that come with your printer, because they are bottom of the basement cheap. I'm just going to go out and shill a couple brands. SanDisk, Samsung, Lexar, house brand names that and they don't sponsor any of this because they couldn't afford me. I buy all my SD cards at Costco because they're cheaper than Sin. And they come with free micro SD card readers, so bonus.
Yeah, there you go. No, according to the Cura website, it says Cura 4.4.1 is the latest, so he must be having a beta. I've never had any problems with 4.4.1 in terms of G-code, especially Start G-code, and I've run them on several different printers now.
The Snapshot was just saying he might have made a typo. That's fair. We all do that. Where exactly is it causing issues for you? At what stage of the start G code is it failing? Depending on where that is, this might be a great opportunity for you to learn some G code. So I would go ahead and download. It used to be Notepad++ was my recommendation. However, I found that no longer reads big G code files. So I'm going to tell you to go into Google if you have Windows and download Notepad 2. It's a slightly modified version of Notepad that has all sorts of editing features in it, and it supports the biggest of G code files. So download that, open up your G code file in that, and then go to the Marlin website and start Googling up the individual G codes to understand what exactly it's doing. And once you've understood a little bit about your moves, about your temperature settings, and so forth, you can go and see a print job start and say, hey, it failed right after I did my bed leveling. What happens after that? And one of two things will happen. Either there's some wonky G code in there, or you're going to notice errors that are a result of a bad SD card. And you're going to say, hey, my printer can't read that because I can't. So either delete that line or try a different SD card.
Yeah, that's usually the best way to go. Let's do this last one here from Battleware. He says, okay, the third and last question for the day. Would have asked this last Saturday, but you guys changed days on me. LOL. I have a E3D V6 hot end. I got a set of nozzle X from Spool 3D. I installed the 0.25 nozzle, but I have a challenge. I'm trying to dial my printer in for flow, but I am so totally lost. I had no problem figuring out flow for the 0.4 nozzle. He says, so I'm using the following cube. So he's probably using the cube off of Thingiverse. With a 0.4, it's easy. The printer lays down 2 walls, you measure the walls, yada, yada, yada. I do it twice on each wall. Tally the 8 measurements, divide by 8 for an average. That gives answer A, and then we take 0.8 divided by A, and that gives us B, so on and so forth. I think what the problem you're probably having here is when you dial down the nozzle size, first and foremost, you have to change it in the slicer that you're using. So you'll change to a 0.25 nozzle. It will give you a new set of layer heights, or at least it should. In Cura, I know that it does for some printers, maybe not all of them, but for some printers it does. And what you want to do is you want to maybe slow down. If you're using a smaller nozzle, you're not pushing nearly as much plastic through, so slow down your printer a little bit. That may help you dial in what you're trying to do and get the most accurate size. I'm not a big fan of going down below 0.4 nozzles because I just don't see any need to for the most part. I've done 28 millimeter size miniatures for D&D and other tabletop wargaming on an Ender 3, and to be perfectly honest with you, I did them with a 0.4 nozzle at a 0.12 layer height and 25 millimeters per second, and it worked out just great for me.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And I mean, if you really want to go fine like that, I still say kind of go resin. But, you know, again, I'm going to hold this cube up and show you guys. This is at a 0.16 millimeter layer height on a 0.8 millimeter nozzle. So, you know, it's getting close to getting dialed in there. But really going down past the 0.4, you're going to lose out a little bit on the FDM just with the vibration and such and all stuff like that. In this case, you know, the vertical banding is actually all right. It's just when you get to the top layers that you start to see a much bigger nozzle width. So 0.25, I'm going to say, believe it or not, remember, your movement in your slicer goes and it sends a value to the printer of how many millimeters of filament to extrude. But your printer translates the number of millimeters into how much is actually going to come, or how many pulses is going to be required to move that much filament. So Cura determines all the sizes, and then your printer actually determines the rate at which it flows. So if you're going from a 0.4 to a 0.25 nozzle, you shouldn't have to modify your steps per millimeter in your firmware. It's going to be 100% in the slicer. And if you're in doubt, play around with the flow rate, which is available, I believe, under the tuning menu in Marlin when you're printing, and just tweak it. Print a few millimeters, wait for it to go through, and say, okay, this is where it's at. Then go into there and drop it down to 80% flow. If it starts looking too thin and your 90 is too fat, well, then try 85, try 90. I've seen some people, and it varies material to material. PLA, I go at 100%, and I've seen when people do ABS and PETG, they drop it down to 93%. So it's all about finding those fine numbers for both your printer and for the material. But Cura will slice it to what it's mathematically supposed to be.
There you go. I just want to, Trevor Rickard's been sending me emails and putting the same question in the chat. So we'll jump right into that right now. And he says, hey, have a quick question for you. It's me again, Trevor. I'm having vertical line problems again. I originally thought it was Z-wobble. I have replaced my couplers. I've double checked everything to make sure everything is tight. I have a brace or brace. I think it's a brace there for the Z axis. I've put concrete underneath my Cr-10S. I've noticed it in the Z axis. Does a little bit of noise come off of it? If not much, I don't know that. What's causing it? Here's my thought on that. There's a couple of issues going on. And let me just cut to me here for a second. There's a couple of issues going on here. First and foremost, those Cr-10s, where the lead screw nuts are, you'll find them on both sides of the gantry going up. If those two screws are tightened all the way down, that Z-nut has no place to go. So it translates whatever abnormality into the rest of the frame, and it ends up in your print. So my suggestion is first take your Allen wrench, back off those two nuts on either side that are holding in that lead screw nut. Just back them off about a quarter of a turn just to loosen them up a bit so that nut can move back and forth. If you remove that nut totally, like if you take the screws right out of it, you're going to notice that those holes are elongated, and they're that way for a reason, so that those Z rods can move back and forth. And they move front to back, not side to side. They just move front to back, and they need to have that little bit of play. You will notice a significant difference if you do that. If you're getting it on the Z or on the X axis, I would double check and make sure that your belt is not over tight, because that can cause a problem. What I do when I'm putting together anything like that is I will take the biggest wrench or the biggest Allen key that came with my printer, and I'll stick it right in at the very end where that idler bearing is. I'll stick it right down there, and that's the perfect spacing I've found for that belt, not to be too loose and not to be too tight. And it should improve your prints. If it doesn't, then send us another email with some video shots of what you're printing, and we'll see if we can't diagnose it further for you.
Yeah, and this is something that I've kind of been playing around with lately, is when you have, well, first of all, what I did recently actually was I loosened up the screws that hold in my Z motors. And then what I did was I told it on both sides to travel up and down. So it was loose just enough that it can move around. And in my case, I actually saw the motor kind of gyroing a little bit like this. And that's, how I was able to tell that my coupler wasn't installed correctly on that case. Now, if you loosen off those screws completely on the coupler, or not on the couplers, I'm sorry, on the nut, riding up and down the axis there, if you go and move it up and down with those loosened right off, and you see that shifting around, either your Z rod is not going directly straight up on your machine, or you might have a partially bent Z rod. And I'm not going to say that doesn't happen, because I've seen a lot of printers where that happens. So, one thing that Richard does at Spool 3D before he sends out rods, and before I buy one in the shop, is we'll take it to a table, we'll roll it back and forth and see if there's any wobble at all in it. And that's probably why we have so few issues, is because when we upgrade them, we make sure that Z rod's straight right off the bat, because simply put, loosening that nut is just a kind of excuse for poor workmanship in the design. It's to say, hey, if you had tightened it down fully, it's going to bind, and that's because your rod's actually not that straight.
That's true.
So it is a fine balance. There's a way you can loosen it off just enough so that the movement is negligible, because basically your X gantry is going to be held in place by the wheels more than that rod. That rod is just a guidance rod to move it up and down.
And there you go. We're just about out of time. We're into our last 5 minutes for tonight. I want to remind you guys that we do this every Saturday night. I don't think you're with me next Saturday, are you, Brian?
No, we are in Lake Louise.
You're in Lake Louise. So next Saturday, you get me all by myself next week.
Unless you want like a live stream from a rather inebriated group of individuals.
No, prefer not. Prefer not.
I'm working on that demonetized list.
We have a brand new episode of the show coming out for you on Wednesday. We are sticking with our theme that we're doing right now, talking about software, talking about firmware, and we're going to be covering that over the next few videos. If you have any questions, you know that you can always send us a question to questions@thefirstlayer.com. We do appreciate all of the questions that you guys send in to us. Just before I go, Pierre Blanchard sent in an email, and he's hoping that we can do a video on the Ender 5 Plus. I will look into getting one. We don't have one between the two of us, but we will look at getting one for you, even if we have to borrow one from Spool 3D, and we'll talk about the Ender 5 Plus in a future video for you. So that's
I do have an Ender 5, but
yeah, you got an Ender 5.
It's too much of a difference. It's just got too many different things to say. Hey, the Ender 5 Plus is this plus this. It's a bigger.
It's also a different board.
I'm super stoked to check it out. But especially with Luke Hatfield, one of the members, he provided Creality a lot of feedback, and so I'm kind of bummed I haven't had a chance to get a hand on one yet. But when you got 8 printers, you got to cut yourself off.
There you go.
Snapshot says he'll make sure to have a big, complicated question for us next week. You're not invited.
Okay.
All right. So just remember that Super Chat is turned on. We still got a couple more minutes here. If you want to get yourself a t-shirt, you know how to do that. You just go to this one. Where is it? Let me just pull that one up. I'm going to cut off your audio for a second, guys. There we go. There, you're back now. So you can get by going to our Teespring store at teespring.com/store/thefirstlayer-2. You'll find all of our merch there, and we do appreciate you guys, those who have bought our merch and have actually put pictures up on our Facebook page. We love seeing it. We'll put it up at the top of the page, and we'll pin it every once in a while. So we do love it, and we want you guys to hopefully love the show and love what we do. And if you do, great. Give us a thumbs up. Share this video. We will leave it up for future reference for you people that want to see it. I'll go back to all of us. We do appreciate you guys sharing our videos, liking, subscribing, and leaving comments. We always relish in the comments that are left. We do try and answer them. We're going to have a special episode coming up where we just answer comments from our past few videos, and we're going to talk about that closer to the end of February. So for now, Brian, Jess, thank you. I see them over here.
Yeah, you gotta look around.
Where are we?
Wait,
they're down here, but I have to look over here. They're down here. There's a lovely lady with 3 lovely.
It's not me.
I don't know.
That's called the demonetization song. Remember?
Oh yeah.
We're not allowed to sing that anymore.
Oh, that's right. So until we see you guys on the next one, or at least I see you on the next one, next live stream, which will be Saturday at 7 Mountain Standard Time next week, remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print. Everybody wave goodbye.
Bye.